Howdy, my name is Nonat, and, you know what? No, this isn't gonna cut it. Nothing makes you feel more fresh than some fresh digs, and Into the AM's apparel is bringing it hard. They are comfortable, they are stylish, and they are affordable. I mean, look at these photos, y'all. I'm not even photogenic, and I look damn good in this clothing. If you want to get some Into the AM apparel of your own, which again, I can't recommend enough, y'all, you can get 3 of their basic tees for just $49.95, but tack off 10% of that with my code NONAT NONAT at checkout, and couple that with their Black Friday deal of 30% off site-wide. That is 3 basic tees that are comfortable and form-fitting and look amazing, all for an incredibly reasonable price. Do yourself a favor, click the link in the description and check out Into the AM for their Black Friday sale. Thank you, Into the AM, for sponsoring this video, for making me look so damn good. Howdy, my name is Nonat, and Pathfinder 2e has a lot more books than I thought. The game's only been around for like 2, maybe 3 years now. I think a little bit more than 3 years. And how many books are there? 23 books, not counting adventure paths. Now, some people may see this as system bloat, but what PF2 has done so well is that about 2/3 of these books are lore books. They have a little bit of mechanics in them, but more often than not, they're there to explain the world to you, the player, while giving you some new stuff to try out in your campaign. But which books are actually worth buying, and which ones bite the big one? I liked alliteration, so I went with it. Welcome to the Pathfinder 2e rulebook tier list, where we're going to go through every single major release in the main rulebook line and the Lost Omens line, put them anywhere from A tier to F tier depending on A, how worth it the book is, B, how required the book feels, and 3, did I go A, B, 3? And 3, and this is the most important one, so pay attention, how much I like it. Now, I'm not going to go into huge detail with each book. In fact, I'm only going to give 1 or 2 sentences about each to keep this video nice, short, and concise, and help you determine which books you want to buy, whether you're just getting into Pathfinder 2e or you're just looking for your next purchase. I'm rating all of these books in chronological order according to their release date, so we're starting where the entire system began, with the core rulebook. And you know I'm giving the core rulebook C tier. No, I'm not kidding. Look, the content in the core rulebook is great, but the book is a mess. Honestly, the only thing keeping this up at C tier is the requirement. You know, you can't really play the game without the core rulebook, but it's not a good book. You know, you've got like races, then backgrounds, then classes. That's fine, but some class features are found way later in the book, and for spells, that's forgivable. But things like alchemical items are not found under crafting, but rather they're found under treasure, and navigating the book, especially for a first-time player, is a nightmare. Hell, a lot of people see this 600-page monstrosity, assume it's all important, and say, no thanks, I'll stick to my 200-page D&D. I can't blame them. The layout is the biggest thing holding the core rulebook back. The content inside is great. Most of the feats and classes in there are still my favorites, but I can't stress how bad this book is. So let's go up a few tiers with the bestiary. It's all the classic monsters. They've all been revamped, updated to the new system. Some of them have been balanced, some of them are a little bit weaker, some of them are a little bit more threatening. Overall, what you see is what you get. It's a great bestiary full of 300 plus pages of excellent monsters to inspire any number of encounters. A tier. The first Lost Omens book in this list, Lost Omens World Guide. It is a very entry-level guide to the world of the Inner Sea region. What you see is what you get, but because how much you need these books is part of the rating system, I can't put it any higher than C tier. There's a couple, like, organization-related archetypes in there, but overall, you can kind of skip this one. Lost Omens Character Guide is definitely a step up from the World Guide. It gave us a bunch of new playable ancestries, it gave us a lot more lore on the cultures of the world for your character, a lot of new different types of ancestries that we already had in the core rulebook, this one gets a solid A tier, especially because, come on, it gave us lizard folk and leshies. It gave us leshies! Gods and Magic, another Lost Omens supplement that gives you information on deities, some expansion on existing core deities, a bunch of new deities, and a super kind of mega list of deities that exist, and the bare minimum information on them in case you want to worship something like Ra. It also came with a bunch of new spells, but I'll be honest, this is the one rulebook I have never gone back to. Sure, sometimes a spell will pop up and I'll have to look it up, but I just use Archives of Nethys, and when it says it comes from Gods and Magic, I just go, oh, that's why I've never heard of it. Unfortunately, Gods and Magic just doesn't do anything that special for me, so unfortunately I have to give it D tier. Another core rulebook release, the Game Mastery Guide, which sounds like it should be super required for a game master, right? It'll include all the basic rules on how to run a campaign. Well, not exactly. Most of those rules are actually in the core rulebook, which again is sort of a player guide and dungeon master's guide all in one. The Game Mastery Guide, rather, feels like a book of tips and tricks for a game master. It's got a lot of different variant rules. It did give us the free archetype variant, along with a bunch of others that most people don't use. The thing holding the Game Mastery Guide back is just how niche some of its content is. Almost everything in that book tends to be optional, which of course you can argue it's a TTRPG, everything is optional. But when the book itself portrays the content as not core, it makes people immediately start to write it off. It could have saved itself with a really solid NPC gallery at the end, which it has, but it feels very limited. The NPC levels are very restrictive and there's just not enough variety. Game Mastery Guide, even though I sounded negative, gets a B tier. It's still worth picking up. Those variant rules are awesome, and if you haven't checked them out, I highly recommend it. You might see something that'll change your game in a way you've been looking for. Bestiary 2, another in the mainline rulebook releases. It's Bestiary 1, but more. The monsters are a little bit more niche, a little bit more creative. I'd be doing it a disservice to not also give it an A tier. It's just more monsters. And while we're at it, I'm gonna just slide Bestiary 3 in here. It's also getting an A tier. All three of these bestiaries are 300 plus pages of quality monsters. If you want the classics, get Bestiary 1. If you want a little bit on the weird side, get Bestiary 2. If you want to just go full-on wild clockwork dragons, get Bestiary 3. The Advanced Player's Guide. This came out about a year into Pathfinder 2E's lifespan. Paizo listened to what the fans said about the core rulebook and the awkward layout and design, and they kept it just to player options. They gave us 4 new classes, a bunch of new spells, a bunch of feats for all the core classes, so much more of the content we love in a much more digestible manner. The Advanced Player's Guide, to this day, is my favorite Pathfinder 2E book, even though it gave us That's Odd. I don't hate that feat as much as I used to, but I still like to keep the meme alive. S-tier Advanced Player's Guide. Well done, Paizo. I would call this book required. Maybe not for your first campaign, or at least your first few months playing the game, but if you've got the core rulebook, you've played a little bit, and you want more, APG is the next big pickup. Lost Omens Legends is fine. If you want to know more about the prominent NPCs in the world, you're gonna love this book. But that's about all you're getting. It's a book full of important NPCs, what they did, if they're still alive, what they're doing, and it's got some great artwork of those NPCs you can use in your campaign, but if you're not looking for big name NPCs to add to your campaign, you can skip this one. Lost Omens Legends gets a C tier. The Pathfinder Society Guide. If we're talking about niche books that are only for a specific subset of tables, this is about as niche as you get. It's cool, it gives you lore on the actual in-world Pathfinder Society, which is super interesting, but most of the book only gives you rules for how to play or run Pathfinder Society sanctioned games, how to progress in Pathfinder Society, which, if you're not aware, is the organized play run by Paizo themselves, as well as some freelance GMs. It does give you a really cool way to play the game that you at home can actually use for a solid advancement kind of skeleton, but overall, most people are not gonna need this book. It is not a bad book by any means, but it does get a D tier simply because it's so niche. The Pathfinder 2e Beginner's Box. It may not be a standalone book, but I would be doing everybody a disservice to not add this release to the list. If you buy the Pathfinder Beginner's Box, you have enough content to play for months. Sure, you can only get to level 3, but if you play a slow-paced campaign, just with the rules they give you, the mini player's guide and the mini GM's guide, as well as the starting adventure it comes with so much more. It comes with a mini bestiary, tokens for all the monsters. A bunch of the monsters in that box are not used in the starting adventure. If you're playing low-level campaigns and you're the kind of group who levels up very slowly, you can squeeze months out of this one purchase. And on top of that, it's just an amazing introduction. The adventure that is brought in by the box is so good for teaching new players the basics of tabletop role-playing games. Pathfinder 2e Beginner's Box gets an S tier. It is up there with the APG as one of my favorite releases for the entire system. The Lost Omens Ancestry Guide, such an easy A tier. It gave us a plethora of new playable ancestries. It gave us new content for the ancestries added in the Advanced Player's Guide. This is what a book should do. Give us something new, expand on something old. That is what we're looking for, Paizo. A tier. Lost Omens Mwangi Expanse. This is the first of a set of location-specific books. Now, the fact that all of the lore in that book is specific to that one location instantly makes it more niche. If your campaign is not taking place in that location or even in the world of Galarian, it's not nearly as useful. You can still steal inspiration from every page. It is dripping with flavor, and the artwork alone is enough to inspire entire stories. But the book itself is just a little bit niche. Not as niche as the old Lost Omens books, however, because they've started sneaking in a little bit more mechanical crunch, some new ancestries, some new archetypes, just a little bit more than they had before. Mwangi Expanse gave us Galoma and the Anati, as well as a few others, I believe, so it gets a B tier. For a Lost Omens very specific niche book, that's a high rating. I want to stress, I'm just following my own criteria for the rating here. If you're making a Mwangi Expanse campaign, this is easy S tier, but universally speaking, the niche lore does keep it at B tier. Secrets of Magic, what's there to say? 2 awesome new classes, 60 pages of new spells, and yes, it might surprise people to hear, but I don't actually hate the Summoner. People think I despise the Summoner, but I don't. They're really, really cool. S tier Secrets of Magic. Oh, I just love the Magus so much. The Summoner is awesome. There's 60 pages of spells! Guns and Gears. Everything Secrets of Magic did for spellcasters, Guns and Gears did for martial classes. 2 more classes, both martials, new weapons, new archetypes. Oh, the Inventor and the Gunslinger are super cool. The Gunslinger is the only other class to ever come in that can match the fighter's accuracy. Sure, it's a little more specified, but they also get more feats to back up the specific weapon type, and it's so cool. Sure, some of these new archetypes are a little specific, but there's 16 of them! 16 new archetypes from Guns and Gears. Oh, these books are both bangers. S tier. S tier. Lost Omens The Grand Bazaar is right up there with Mwangi Expanse. A lot of mechanical crunch you can use at your table, and sure, at first glance, it might seem like it'll be stuck in B tier because of the location-specific niche. But Grand Bazaar presents itself in a way that makes this one of the single most useful books for any game master, because the Grand Bazaar is listed as separate shops, meaning you can take any of these shops and just out of the Grand Bazaar, put it in your city. Doesn't matter where you are, none of these shops have to canonically be in the Grand Bazaar. They've added restaurants, they've added pet shops, they've added so many things that you no longer have to come up with on the spot. Instead, you can just look through the Grand Bazaar and go, that one! And it's there. A tier Grand Bazaar, my favorite Lost Omens line book. Monsters of Myth. This is very similar to Legends, except instead of notable NPCs, it's notable monsters. Big scary ones, world-ending threats, even some more low-level mythical ideas that might only be level 7 or 8, but are strong enough to create rumors and myths around small settlements. If you want some inspiration to create your own monsters, or just use these as campaign final bosses, this is a good book for you, but I am going to have to put it in the same place I put Legends, which is C tier. Lost Omens Absalom. What can I say? Paizo brings it with these location-specific books. You would think one city, a book about one city would be so niche you could never use it or it wouldn't be enough. Oh, then you haven't seen Lost Omens Absalom. In this one book about one city, they give you enough content that you could run literally dozens of campaigns in this one spot. Sure, it's the biggest city in the region, but it's still one city. And the book is huge! This is almost 300 pages of lore just about Absalom, and everything in that city is interesting, from the lowest level threats to the highest level world-ending secrets that lurk beneath its streets. And also, the Beetle and Grimm's Gold Edition is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It's my prized possession. Book of the Dead. This is unfortunately probably my least favorite in the main line of rulebook releases. It falls into the issue of being a bit too niche, even for a rulebook. Lots of people love the ability to play as undead characters, but it just ended up feeling too clunky for me, since most of these undead characters need to sacrifice class feats, because things like vampirism, being a lich, or a mummy were all made as archetypes instead of ancestries. I think it was to save space because skeleton was made as an ancestry just fine, and I think skeletons were done great. It's just unfortunate the rest of these didn't get the same treatment. And some of them leave a really sour taste in the player's mouth, like Vampire and Lich, for balance reasons, are made incredibly weak compared to their actual canonical power, and it's kind of unfortunate. Book of the Dead still gets a B tier, because it's still Paizo quality writing, and all the mechanics are very useful. There's a whole mini bestiary at the back. It's fantastic. It's still worth buying. I'm just not a fan of what they released with this book. The Knights of Lastwall. I will be the first to admit that I am probably doing this book a disservice, but I just did not enjoy it. All of the mechanics they released in this book feel so situational with no reward to compensate that situational aspect. Which is sad, because this was a Lost Omens lore book that felt like it was being published as a mechanics book, and I thought that was awesome. They're going with more mechanics with this lore book to sort of tell the story through character options. Unfortunately, most of those character options were useless unless you were specifically fighting undead, and even then, they were just on par with existing universal options. There's always the defense of, well, the Knights of Lastwall are an anti-undead brigade, and I understand that. But then they should be better at fighting the undead, not equal to someone with a universal ability. Knights of Lastwall unfortunately gets a D tier from me. The Dark Archive. This is another banger of a mainline rulebook, however it does fall a bit short when compared to its older brother and sister of Guns and Gears and Secrets of Magic. Dark Archive's 2 new classes are awesome. I love the Thaumaturge, the Psychic is really, really cool. My main issue with this book comes from the layout. They did something risky and creative rather than having it just be, ancestries, then classes, then this, then this. Instead, the entire book is laid out in lore-focused chapters like cryptids and cults and doppelgangers and stuff like that, and unfortunately, the new mechanics introduced by the book are in the chapters about that mechanic, meaning if you want to find the mirror duplicate versatile heritage, you need to figure out which chapter that's in. And it's easy enough, you say, oh, it's in the Mirrors chapter, so you flip to the Mirrors chapter and then you find it within the Mirrors chapter, but it's just a kind of a clunky layout. You know, I'm the kind of person who prefers all my classes in one place, all my feats in one place, all my spells in one place, and especially when the spells are spread out among all the different chapters and there's no just spells section, it doesn't feel great. There is a spell list, but it just gives a one-sentence description, and then you gotta flip back through the book to the right page number to see the actual spell itself. Dark Archive is great, the content inside is absolutely worth it, but the layout dips it just back down to an A-tier book. And finally, the most recent release is the Impossible Lands. The Impossible Lands has some really cool lore over one of the most mysterious sections of the Inner Sea region, the Impossible Lands. You get to learn about the mutations of the Mana Waste, the Wild West Alkenstar, and the mechanics are cool too. You know, there's a new Gunslinger subclass, there's some new archetypes and equipment. But let me tell you why the Impossible Lands gets an S tier. Everyone is so damn hot! And there you have it, my tier list for every single book released for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I want to hear from you. What books do you like? Do you disagree with anything? I'm sure I'm going to get some Knights of Last Wall defenders in the comment defending the Last Wall, which is fitting. Does that make me Tar-Bathon? Cool. But yeah, I love hearing from y'all. Thank you so much to my YouTube members and patrons for supporting the channel. If you would also like to support the channel, there's a join button right below this video where you can join for as little as 99 cents per month. It's very, very helpful. If you haven't already, click the link in the description to check out my second channel, Nonat, where we are doing a playthrough of Kingmaker and Tainted Grail Conquest. I'm sure one of those games is going to pique your interest. I'd really appreciate you going over there, checking it out, and maybe subscribing if you're interested. We're uploading 5 new videos a week every day on that channel. Not 5 videos a day, but 5 videos Monday through Friday. I could have explained that better, but I'm tired. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no not once.